Hello and welcome back to Advanced Java. In this video, I'm going to provide another example of a model view controller application where we use maybe a bit more practical model or Java Bean, and that will be the student class that I've used a few times in some demos throughout the semester. So I'm going to go ahead and use the attribute demo that I started off with earlier when we were learning about attributes and how to set attributes into the request and then display those using expression language on our JSPs. So here, rather than just sending through some very simple strings, and I'm still going to send a string through for my page title, but instead of just sending 1, 2, 3 through for some variable, I'm instead going to send a student object through. So I'm going to create a student. We'll call my student. Oops. And the constructor here takes first name, last name, a grade, and ID. And Susie Q, of course, is an A student, and her ID is 40. All right, and then here, rather than just passing through the string, I'm going to pass through my student object to my JSP. Just as a reminder, a couple of things. What does the student class look like? Let's take a quick peek at that. So here's my student. This does fit the rules for the Java Bean. So I've got private instance variables. Again, with Java Beans, these are referred to as properties. We've got our empty constructor. I have a constructor that's overridden, which I just used. That, of course, is not required for the Java Bean, but it makes my life a little bit simpler when I'm actually want to create a student pretty quickly. So you just saw that. Getters and setters, public getters and setters for each of the properties. And then I've got a toString method here, which we'll see in action in a little bit. So coming back here, we're just passing our student through. It's going to be referred to in our JSP as just some variable. And I'm going to leave that alone so that I don't have to make quite as many changes on the JSP side here. Notice that this does not have to match what the name of my variable, my object reference variable is. This can be anything that I want. It should be meaningful, which it isn't in this case, but this is for demonstration purposes. And then passing my object through here. So let's take a quick peek at the JSP in this case. So that was the EL, the expression language demo JSP. Here we've got expression language for the title and then also for some variable. So what I want you to think about here is you'll notice I am not referencing any properties here on some variable. So I'm not accessing first name, last name, or anything here. So think about what method does get called when I don't specify a particular property that I want to access. Let's have you think about that while I build and deploy here. And imagine what we're going to see when we run this particular demo. All right, so the title is still the same. We've got our expression language demo. Here we're seeing the first name, last name, grade, and ID being written out. Even though I didn't call any of these particular properties, I didn't use the getter to see first name, last name, grade. So what happened? Well, just like in our system.out.print lines, if I were in a regular Java file, and I did a system.out.print ln and I passed in my student, what method gets called here? It's the toString method, right? The toString method is implicitly called here. And so the same thing is happening with my expression language on the other side. So some variable, if I don't use dot notation to access any of the attributes on my student, then what happens is the toString method is called, and we can see the format of my toString is the name of the class, curly braces, and then each of the instance variables or the properties here. So that jives with what we're seeing here. So let's modify this a little bit so that we can actually have a good model for how we should access those different properties. So here I'm going to change this to first name. And we'll write out each of these on separate lines here. So I'm just going to throw a paragraph tag in on each of these. Oops. And so then here we'll write out the last name, the grade, and the ID. Now remember, while I'm using the attribute name, what actually happens behind the scenes is that get first name will be called, get last name, get grade, and get ID. Let's go ahead and recompile, redeploy, and we'll give this a fresh run. There we go. So we've got the different attributes coming out by accessing those attributes using the getters and setters within the JSP. Or I'm sorry, not the setters, but the getter, which is called when we access each of these attributes. All right, so that will provide you with yet another example of model view controller. Again, this JSP that I'm in, that's our view. Our controller is the servlet, our attribute demo v1 in this case, and our model, our POJO, our plain old Java object, also known as the entity, that is our student class in this case. All right, I hope you find that helpful as you continue working through this unit. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out in Slack. I look forward to hearing from you guys. We'll see you next time.